Good morning, YouTube, and welcome back to Fernvalley Farm's YouTube channel. We're on this channel, like I always say, we are all country or pure country. If we're meeting for the first time, my name is Vince. Welcome. Thanks for watching the video. Today, I want to talk about feeding grain to your horse. I'm talking horses only right now. There are so many different types of grains and feeds for your horses. And the amount that you would feed, that's going to vary. There's no set, there is a rule of thumb. The rule of thumb is 5% of the horse's body weight per 1,000 pounds, I want to say. So 1,000 pound animal, 5 pounds of grain once a day. But you can't go by what the book says, because every horse, it's like a person, every horse, big, small, in between, breed. I mean, there is just so many different variables to this subject. So the best thing you could do, unless you really know what's what, you can check with your feed guy. Go to a feed store and ask them. Tell them what your horse is doing. My horse, if your horse is an athlete, or if your horse works really hard, your horse shows. It's like an athlete. So if your horse is really working hard, really a high performance horse, you're going to need a higher protein feed. If your horse is standing around doing absolutely nothing but a lawn ornament, then they don't need much grain at all. If your horse is old, there's senior feeds that are like pelleted. They're designed for older horses. Your average middle-aged horse, here again, if you're just trail riding or just general riding, a 12% mix is good. You could buy a 12% grain mix. You could buy a 14% mix. You could have higher fat contents, lower fat contents. I mean, there's just so much to it. So don't open a book, read the book, and say the book says feed my horse this much. Don't do that. You can have yourself problems. What I feed here, this is a 12% mix. I've got the fat content in this is up just a little bit, just to help keep weight on horses. I've added the fat content a little higher in this feed just to help keep weight on, especially in the wintertime. In the summer when they're on green grass, they don't get any grain. They don't need it. But spring, late spring, fall, winter, I feed them grain. Now, that doesn't mean you have to feed your horse grain. You don't have to. You can give them plenty of hay, and that's all they would need. But here again, it depends on your animal. So my feed, that's like a 12% sweet feed type mix. Although there's very, very, very little molasses in it. There's barely any molasses at all in it. I don't like to feed my horses all that sugar. It's kind of like being diabetic. Or it's kind of like somebody who's diabetic. They don't need all that sugar. Horses, too, don't need all that sugar in their system. So I have them just add just a little bit of molasses just to keep the dust down. Because what I do, and I'll show you here. You see this bin way over there? That tall bin over there next to the building? That's what I get my grain. I have it brought in. Well, you can see it in that video in that truck. The truck brought it and delivered it there. I get like 2 ton at a time. That's what that truck was. That truck brought me. That bin will hold about 7 ton. But I only buy like 2 at a time because I'm not feeding that many animals here. So, and when I do have them bring the grain, I don't have them put, like I said, when he mixes it for me, he puts very little molasses just to keep the dust down, and that's fine. But I don't want it loaded with molasses, especially too if it sits in there in the summertime and it gets hot. Just think that's a metal bin. It gets really, really hot in the summertime. That molasses could mold too. So then you got issues with that. You don't want to feed your horse obviously moldy grain, because if you get some grain that's got some mold in it. If you've seen that last video I did about hay. Horses won't eat moldy hay. They'll kick it off to the side. But if you get some bad grain, if it's got a little bit of mold in it or some mold dust, or if it's not quite right, they love eating their grain. So you go to feed them, they're just going to inhale it. They just want to eat it. Unless it's really bad, then they'll spit it out. But generally, they're just going to suck down whatever you put in front of them. And if it's bad, you can make them sick. You can colic them. So you want to try and avoid that at all possible. Make sure you put your grain in a place where the mice can't get at it, or it's dry, it stays clean. But my advice to you, depending on what you have, if you've got a little miniature pony, they barely, like little minis, they don't need much at all, maybe a handful. Average size pony, my old pony around back, I give her a half a can of this, and she does really well on it. She does really well on that. She keeps her weight up really good. She's probably a good she's probably about 500 pounds. So I just give her a half a can, and she does absolutely fine on it. but little minis don't need hardly any. Horses that are a little bit bigger than that, like I said, I can't tell you how much to feed your horse. It all depends on your animal. You got a big draft horse, Clydesdales, Percheron, anything, any kind of a draft type breed, Belgiums, any of that, that's going to require more feed. And here again, depending on what they're doing. So my advice is just talk to your feed guy. Go to a feed store. Feed stores, there's usually knowledgeable people in there that will guide you in the right direction. Go to a actual feed company. That's what I do. If I've got a question about my feed, I just call and I'll be like, hey, what do you think about this or that? And he'll tell me, and they'll guide you in the right direction. Like I said, this feed here has got cracked corn. It's got crimped oats, because crimped oats is better than whole oats because it's already crimped open, and it's already crimped and it's broken open, which means when they digest it, they'll get more out of it right away. It's kind of like cracked corn is the same thing. There's cracked corn in there. It's already cracked and broke, so when they chew it and they digest it, they're going to get more out of it than if you're feeding whole corn. And you can feed whole corn, and I've seen people do it. But a lot of times, if you look, when you go to clean your stalls, if you look in your manure, you'll see whole kernels of corn in there. It's just going right through them because they're not chewing it all the way. They're swallowing it, and it's just going right through them. But the cracked corn's already cracked, and they're going to chew it and get more out of it. Same thing with crimped oats. Or rolled oats, they'll take them, they got them, I've never done it. I've never even seen it, but there's a machine when it's all processed. It actually takes the oats and it'll roll it, it breaks it open. And your horse will get more out of it that way too. So there's cracked corn, there's oats, there's a 32% protein pellet, I want to say, in there. I think it's a 32% protein pellet. There's some other vitamins and minerals sprinkled in there. They'll give you like a whole sheet with everything that's in there. The vitamins, all the different vitamins that's mixed in with the minerals, depending on how your feed guy makes it. And it comes out to basically a 12% mix. And the fat content, I could be wrong, but I think the way they increase the fat content is with canola, it's not vegetable, I want to say canola oil, I think. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me. I know it's not vegetable oil. I'm almost positive it's not vegetable oil. I know they add oil to it to raise the fat content. And I want to say it's canola oil. I'm almost positive. But if I'm wrong, somebody correct me. But that's how they'll raise the fat content. And this is about 6.5% fat content. And it works out good for these guys. I've got a couple older horses here. I got my one horse right there. If you can see him walking away, he's going to be 8 this year. He does really good on it. My pony does really good on it. Any of the other boarders that I've had here do really good on it. So my advice is check with the feed guy. If you're new to this, this video obviously is more geared towards the beginners, people that are maybe thinking about getting into horses, not sure about what's what. And if you got any questions on it, just ask. Just leave a comment below, and I'll answer as quick as I can. One other thing too, you can look let's say you're watching your horse eat, okay? Because you want your horses to chew their grain. You want them to chew their food and digest it properly. Let's say. And when I tell you this, he's the exception right there. If you're watching them eat and they're chewing it, it's all falling out of their mouth. Horses need to have their teeth floated. Generally, some horses need it twice a year, some need it once a year. What that means is on the side of the horse's jaw, their jawbone's that long. There's teeth on top and bottom, obviously. Well, they grow points on them. Is what happens. And when they grow those points, a vet comes in or a horse dentist will come down and file those points down. So their teeth are flat. So when they're chewing, they're just flat. If they got sharp edges on them, when they bite down, it pinches in their gums. And they're not going to chew their hay properly. They're not going to chew their grain in their feed properly. So you want to make sure that those points are filed down. And one way you could tell, might be an indication if your horse needs his teeth floated, is if you're watching them eat and they're chewing and it's just falling all out of their mouth because they can't chew properly because it hurts. Well, he's the exception. He wastes so much grain. I wind up feeding him on the ground. I'll find a dry spot and I'll put it on the ground because he puts his face in the bucket, picks his head up and looks all over the place and eats, and it's falling everywhere. I've tried so many different ways to stop him from doing that. Try to feed him in a deep bucket, shallow. I just put it on the ground. I'll find a dry spot because he's got to put his head down. He's going to pick his head up anyways. It's going to fall all over the place. So he's the one you can't go by that on because I know I would just have his teeth done. And 2 or 3 days later, you still watch him eat. He's just dropping it all over the place. That's just how he eats. Some horses put their heads in a bucket and they don't come up. They stick their face in a bucket and they don't pick it out. They don't pull their face out until they're done eating. That's just what they are, how they eat. Other horses will just lift their heads up and they'll just kind of chew normally. But anyways, my whole point to that is, one indication your horse might need his teeth floated is that. And the other reason you want to make sure your horse's teeth are floated is so when they chew their food, they chew it and they digest it properly. You don't want them just eating it and swallowing it. Because if they just eat it and swallow it, they're not getting as much out of it. But if they're chewing it and they're grinding it all up and then they're digesting it, their systems are going to get more out of it that way. So that's really, really important, actually. Keeping your horse's teeth floated. You can have your vet come out when your vet comes out and does spring shots. Or if you have a situation, or if you're in a barn where a vet happens to be there doing something else, say, hey, can you check my horse's teeth, see if they need to be floated? And he'll tell you yes or no. And there's one way you can really tell. If you put your fingers in the side of their mouth and you feel the sides of their teeth, if they're really pointy and sharp, they need to be floated. I'll try and do a video on that sometime. It's kind of an interesting subject. But anyways, back to this. So the book says, or if you Google it, it says 5% of the horse's body weight, which is 1,000-pound animal, 5 pounds once a day. What I feed, this coffee can here, one other point to this subject, this coffee, I just feed 2 of these, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. This can weighs about, if I remember right, about 3¼ pounds. If you want to know exactly what it weighs, get yourself one of those big scales, weigh the can empty first. See what the can weighs. I want to say the can weighs 1/2 pound. It's been a while since I've done this. The can weighs about 1/2 pound, then fill it with grain, subtract 1/2 pound, and they'll tell you what it weighs, right? That whole thing is about 3¼ pounds, I want to say. So basically, we'll just round up to 3. So basically, each horse is getting 6 pounds of grain a day, and they're doing really well on it. They're keeping their weight on. They're big and fat. They're doing really well. Especially going in the winter, you want to make sure your horses are up on their weight. And that's another thing too, when it's really, really, like up here, depending on where you're watching this video, if you're out west or down south where it's warm, like I said, feeding can just vary. But up here, when it gets really, really cold and bitterly cold, we feed extra. You want to feed your horses extra. Keeps that body heating, keeps their systems going. We'll put blankets on them, except him, because every time I put a blanket on him, he tears it off. He will not wear a blanket. But the other ones all got blankets on. So you want to feed extra in the winter too, and I'm going to do a video on that once it gets really cold out. This is so nice. It's been beautiful the last few days. Anyways, so each horse out here gets about 6 pounds twice a day, except for the pony. She only gets 1/2 can twice a day, and she does really, really well on that. So, and there are so many different types of feed mixes. So my advice to you, especially like I said, this is more geared to the new person, go to a feed store, check with the feed guy. Say, I just got this horse, it's this breed, it's this old, it's this big, it does this. You know, if your son, daughter, or yourself are just riding, just trail riding, nothing, or just riding around the arena, or just going out down the road, or whatever your situation is, explain it to them, and they'll steer you in the right direction as far as what you need for a good feed mix and how much to feed and all that. There's different proteins, there's minerals, there's vitamins you can add to your feed, there's supplements. There is so much. You can't talk about all this in one video. I'd be going on for hours. And I don't even know half of this stuff because there's just so much stuff to it. And every once in a while I need my memory refreshed. I'll go back and look at my card in there. It's got all the ingredients out, like what my fat content is if I can't remember. As a matter of fact, I got to have him come out pretty soon and put another two ton in that, and that'll get me all the way till spring then. So, but anyways, I think that's kind of it in a nutshell. If you got any questions, like I said, just ask, and I'll try and answer as quick as I can. But do me a favor, subscribe to the channel. Hit this little button right here, subscribe. I really, really appreciate it. Also, at the end of the video, you can hit the subscribe button that way too, and that'll just subscribe you immediately also. And that'll pop up towards the end here. But subscribe to the channel, support the channel. When you do subscribe, hit the little bell next to the subscribe button. You'll get notified every time a video comes out. Thumbs up are always appreciated. It makes these videos pop up quicker in searches. Like I always say, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys soon. All right, bye.